They say accountants notice everything, the numbers that don't add up, the patterns that break, the small discrepancies that reveal bigger truths. I'm Carol Moore, and I've been a forensic accountant for 15 years. I can spot a cooked book from a mile away. What I couldn't see, apparently, was my own marriage falling apart. Or maybe I did see it. Maybe I just didn't want to believe what the numbers were telling me. The morning everything changed started like any other Wednesday in Georgetown. I woke at 6, the November sunrise barely touching the brick townhouses outside our bedroom window. Brian's side of the bed was already empty, not unusual. He'd been leaving for early meetings for months now. I went through my routine on autopilot. Shower, coffee, check the calendar. That's when I saw it, written in Brian's handwriting on the kitchen planner. Anniversary party. 3 weeks. Watergate Hotel. Everything's arranged. 25 years. A quarter century. Silver anniversary. I should have felt something. Excitement? Nostalgia? Instead, I just felt tired. Morning. Brian appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed in his charcoal suit, the expensive one I'd bought him for his birthday. He smelled like cologne, not the one I'd given him, something sharper, younger. Morning, I replied, not looking up from my phone. I saw you booked the Watergate for the party. Yeah, figured we should do it right. 25 years deserves something special. He poured coffee into his travel mug, the stainless steel one with his company logo. Invited about 100 people, colleagues, friends, family. Make it a real celebration. 100 people, for a marriage that felt like it was held together with dental floss and habit. That's a lot, I said carefully. We've got a lot to celebrate. He kissed the top of my head, a gesture so automatic it felt like muscle memory rather than affection. Gotta run. Budget meeting at 8. I watched him leave, noticed the way his shirt fit a little tighter across the shoulders. He'd been working out. New cologne, new clothes, earlier mornings. The accountant in me started doing what accountants do, tracking the pattern. I pulled up our joint checking account on my phone, something I reviewed weekly anyway. It's what I do for a living after all. Managing money for the Alliance Development Group meant I knew how to read financial statements like some people read novels. And our account was reading like a thriller. $8,000 withdrawn over 6 weeks. Small amounts, $200 here, $500 there. Just below the threshold that would trigger an alert. Smart. If I hadn't been looking, I might have missed it. Tuesday lunches at the Palm, $180. Thursday dinner at Fiola Mary, $340. Last month, the charge at Tiffany & Co., $3,500. I hadn't received any gifts from Tiffany. My coffee went cold as I sat at our kitchen island, the marble counter suddenly feeling like ice under my palms. I'm 50 years old. I've been married for 25 years. I run the financial operations for a multi-million-dollar development company. And apparently, I'd been too busy balancing everyone else's books to notice my own husband was cooking ours. The call from Sarah came during my lunch break. Carol. Her voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to tell you something that will hurt. I need to talk to you, in person. Can you meet me? Sarah Mitchell and I had been friends since college, back when Georgetown was just where we went to school, not where we could afford to live. She worked at Capital One's wealth management division now, handled portfolios for people with more money than sense. We met at Baked and Wired in Georgetown, the coffee shop we'd been going to for 20 years. Some things stay constant, even when everything else shifts. I don't know how to say this, Sarah began, stirring her latte like it might hold answers. So I'm just going to say it. I saw Brian yesterday, at lunch, at Le Diplomate. Le Diplomate, one of those $180 Tuesday lunches. He wasn't alone. She looked at me, her brown eyes full of something between pity and anger. There was a woman, young, maybe 30, 32, blonde. They were holding hands across the table. He was feeding her his dessert. I took a sip of my coffee. It tasted like nothing. What was she wearing? I asked. It was an odd question, but my brain had gone into data collection mode. Expensive. Camel-colored coat, looked like Max Mara. Designer bag. She works somewhere professional. She had that look. Did he see you? No. I left before they could. Carol, I'm so sorry. I thought you should know. Thank you. I meant it. Information is power, and Sarah had just given me a crucial data point. After she left, I sat alone at our little table by the window, watching people walk by on M Street. Mothers with strollers, students with backpacks, couples holding hands. I pulled out my phone and did what any good investigator would do. I searched our credit card statements for Le Diplomate. 4 charges in 2 months. All Tuesday afternoons. All around 180. Then I searched for Max Mara. 1 charge 6 weeks ago. 1,450. Brian had bought her that coat. I thought about the woman I'd been at 25, marrying Brian Moore in a simple ceremony at Georgetown University's chapel. I'd believed in forever then. Believed in building a life together. We'd talked about children, a house in the suburbs, growing old together. The children never came. We tried for 5 years before the doctor said there was nothing medically wrong. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. Brian had taken it hard, especially with his mother's constant comments about carrying on the family name. We'd adapted. Told ourselves we were lucky, more time for our careers, for travel, for each other. Except now there was someone else. Someone young enough to still have time. I paid for my coffee and walked back to my office, my heels clicking on the Georgetown sidewalk. The November wind cut through my wool coat, but I barely felt it. I had work to do. Jennifer Williams' law office was in a restored townhouse on Wisconsin Avenue, all exposed brick and modern furniture. We'd gone to Georgetown together, both of us scholarship kids who'd made good. She'd become one of D.C.'s top family law attorneys. I'd become a CFO. Carol Moore. She greeted me with a hug, then took a step back, reading my face. This isn't a social call, is it? No? We sat in her office, me in the client chair for the first time ever. It felt strange being on this side of the desk. Tell me about your assets, Jen said, pulling out a legal pad. She'd always been direct. I laid it out like a financial report. Georgetown condo, purchased 2005, current value approximately $1.2 million, joint ownership, both names on the deed. Cabin in Shenandoah, worth maybe $200,000. My 401k, about $400,000. His 401k, $350,000. Joint savings, currently $85,000. Joint checking, about $12,000. The condo, Jen interrupted. How was it purchased? My parents gave us $200,000 as a wedding gift. We used it as a down payment, took out a mortgage for the rest. Was the gift to both of you, or to you? I thought back. The check was made out to me. For our daughter Carol, for your new home. My dad was very specific about that. Jen leaned forward. And when did you buy the house? Before or after the wedding? Before, March 2005. We got married in June. So you owned it before you were married? Technically, but Brian's name was added to the deed in June after the wedding. Jen smiled, the smile that made opposing counsel nervous. Carol, do you still have that check? The paperwork from the purchase? I think so, in our safe deposit box. Get it. Tomorrow. Because if we can prove that condo was a premarital gift to you specifically, and Brian was added later, that changes everything. I felt something shift in my chest. Not hope exactly. More like the feeling you get when you find the error in a spreadsheet, and suddenly all the numbers make sense. There's something else, I said. I've started transferring money out of our joint account. $5,000 so far from last month's salary, into a personal account in my name only. Smart. As long as it's your earnings and you're not depleting the account, that's legally defensible. You're protecting your assets. That's what I thought. Jen studied me for a moment. Carol, how long have you known? Known what? That something was wrong. I looked out her window at the Georgetown streets below, at the life I'd built in this city over 25 years. Longer than I wanted to admit, I said quietly. Kim. The safe deposit box at Capital One on M Street held the usual things: birth certificates, social security cards, the deed to the cabin, our wills. And there, in a manila envelope labeled House Papers 2005, I found it. The check from my parents, dated March 2005, made out to Carol Elizabeth Moore with a memo line that read, "For the purchase of your home, with all our love." The original purchase agreement, showing the property at 3214 M Street, D'Andaro, as belonging solely to Carol E. Moore. And then, dated June 15, 2005, 2 weeks after our wedding, an amendment to the deed adding Brian Scott Moore as joint owner. I stood in the small private room at the bank, holding these papers, and something clicked into place. This whole time I'd been acting like Brian held all the cards, like I was the one who had to worry about what I'd lose in a divorce. But the math said otherwise. The accountant in me started calculating. If the condo was my premarital asset, gifted specifically to me, with Brian added only after marriage. I pulled out my phone and texted Jen. "Found everything. The condo is mine." Her response came immediately. "Get it appraised. And Carol, get ready. This changes your strategy." I locked the documents back in the safe deposit box, but not before making copies on the bank's scanner. One set for Jen, one set for my personal files, one set for William Perry, the real estate attorney who'd handled our original purchase. Because if Brian wanted to play games with our assets, he was playing against the wrong woman. I'm a forensic accountant. I find money people are trying to hide. What made him think I wouldn't find his secrets too? That night, Brian came home late. Again. The lie was almost beautiful in its construction. "Sorry, babe. Team dinner ran long. You know how Henderson gets when he starts talking about the Jenkins project." I knew Henderson. Henderson was retired. Had been for 6 months. "No problem," I said from the couch, not looking up from my book. "I had leftovers." He showered, washing off her perfume I assumed, and came to sit beside me. 3 weeks till the party," he said, putting his arm around me. The gesture felt rehearsed, like he was practicing for an audience. I was thinking we should do something special, maybe renew our vows, in front of everyone. The audacity actually made me smile. "That's a beautiful idea," I said, and I watched him relax. He thought I was clueless, naive, the devoted wife who'd never question him. But here's what Brian didn't know. I'd known about his affair for 3 months. I'd been preparing for this moment since August, when I'd overheard him on the phone with his mother, talking about how things needed to change and how I'd understand eventually. I'd already consulted with Jen, already secured the property documents, already moved $15,000 to my personal account, already started building my case. Because 3 months ago, when I first suspected, I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I did what I do best. I investigated. And what I found was a conspiracy. Brian, his mother Patricia, a lawyer named Robert Hayes, all planning to use our anniversary party as the stage for my public humiliation, followed by a quick divorce that would leave me with nothing. They thought they were so clever. They thought I'd be too shocked, too emotional, too devastated to fight back. They forgot that I'm the woman who finds million-dollar discrepancies in corporate budgets. They forgot that I'm the daughter of a man who taught me to always read the fine print. They forgot that quiet doesn't mean weak. As I sat there on our couch, Brian's arm around me, his lies smooth as silk, I thought about the speech he was probably writing, the divorce papers his lawyer was probably drafting, the future he was planning with a woman young enough to be our daughter. And I smiled. Because in 3 weeks at the Watergate Hotel, in front of 100 guests, Brian Moore was going to learn an important lesson. Never try to cheat an accountant. We always balance the books. Patricia Moore arrived on a Thursday afternoon, unannounced but not unexpected. Brian's mother never did anything without calculation, and the timing, 2 weeks before the anniversary party, told me everything I needed to know. "Carol, darling." She swept into my living room like she owned it, which I suppose she thought she did. In Patricia's world, everything her son touched belonged to him, and by extension, to her. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all. I poured tea into the Wedgwood china she'd given us for our 10th anniversary, one of the few gifts from her that hadn't come with strings attached. What brings you by? She settled into the armchair by the window, the afternoon light catching the diamonds on her fingers. At 72, Patricia Moore was still formidable. Silver hair perfectly coiffed, St. John's suit impeccable, posture straight as a ruler. I've been thinking about the future, she began, stirring sugar into her tea with deliberate slowness. At my age, one must be practical about these things. Here it comes, I thought. The opening move. I'm revising my will, she continued, and it's made me rather contemplative. About legacy. About what we leave behind. That's very wise, I said, playing my part in this elaborate dance. The Potomac house, my investment portfolio, the family jewelry. She paused, let the words hang. Normally, these things would pass to grandchildren, but of course you and Brian never... She let the sentence trail off, but the implication landed like a stone in still water. 25 years of this. 25 years of subtle reminders that I'd failed at my primary duty as a wife. No, I said quietly. We never did. It's such a shame. Patricia sipped her tea, eyes sharp over the rim of her cup. Brian would have been a wonderful father. He has so much to offer a child. But well, time runs out for everyone, I suppose. The cruelty was exquisite. She'd managed to blame me for our childlessness while maintaining plausible deniability. I suppose it does, I agreed. Which brings me to my question. She set down her cup. The condo documents. Where do you keep them? For estate planning purposes, you understand. I need to know what assets exist, how they're titled, to structure things properly. There it was, the real reason for her visit. They're in our safe deposit box, I said. Why do you ask? Oh, just being thorough. You know how these lawyers are, they want documentation of everything. She smiled, all warmth and concern. Have you and Brian discussed what happens to this place? If something were to happen to one of you? We have wills, I said carefully. Everything goes to the surviving spouse. Yes, but those were written years ago, weren't they? Before circumstances changed. Before Brian decided he wanted someone younger. Someone who could still give him what I couldn't. I suppose we should update them, I said, refilling her tea. Thank you for the reminder. Patricia stayed for another 20 minutes, making small talk about the anniversary party, commenting on my outfit choices, suggesting I might want to freshen up my appearance before the big night. You're 50 now, dear. It takes more effort to look presentable. Have you considered Botox? Or perhaps a good facialist? Brian's colleagues will all be there with their wives, and you want to represent well. I smiled and nodded and played the grateful daughter-in-law, even as I catalogued every backhanded compliment, every subtle dig. When she finally left, she gathered her things from the side table. Purse, gloves, phone. But in her hurry, something fluttered to the floor. A business card. Robert Hayes & Associates Family Law. Asset protection. Divorce. I picked it up, turned it over, on the back, in Patricia's handwriting. Call before the 20th. Confirm papers ready. The 20th was our anniversary. I took a photo of the card, front and back, then slipped it into my pocket. Patricia would realize she'd lost it eventually, but by then, it would be too late. Teddy. That night, while Brian was in the shower, I found his old iPad in his study drawer. He'd gotten a new one for work 6 months ago, but the old one was still charged, still logged into his accounts. Muscle memory made him careless. He'd always used simple passwords. Our wedding date, his birthday, his mother's birthday. I tried them all. None worked. Then I remembered something Sarah had said about the woman at lunch. Young, maybe 30, 32. I pulled up Brian's LinkedIn on my own phone, searched his connections for recent additions. There, Madison Taylor, account manager at his firm. Joined the company 8 months ago. Her profile picture showed a blonde woman with a professional smile. Birthday listed March 25th, 1989. I typed it into the iPad, 032589. It opened. The messages were all there, preserved like evidence in amber. Text thread. Brian and Maddie. Maddie, baby, I'm tired of sneaking around. When are you going to tell her? Brian. Soon, sweetheart. I promise. After the anniversary party. Maddie. Why after? Just tell her now. I want to be with you properly. Brian. Because I need to handle this right. The condo is worth over $1 million. If I do this wrong, she gets half. Maddie. Your mom said there's a way to keep everything. Brian. Hayes is working on it. Trust me. By New Year's, we'll be living there together. Maddie. Promise? Brian. I promise. Just a few more weeks of patience. I scrolled through weeks of messages. Plans for their future. Discussions about after the divorce. Brian sending her photos of our bedroom and your new closet. My bedroom. My closet. My home. Text thread. Brian and Patricia. Patricia. Did you speak with Hayes? Brian. Yes. He says the key is getting her to sign before she lawyers up. Patricia. And you're certain about doing it at the party? Brian. It's perfect, Mom. Public setting. All our friends there. She'll be too humiliated to make a scene. We'll have the papers ready. Patricia. What about the house? You said her parents gave money for it. Brian. That was 20 years ago. Hayes says without documentation it's nearly impossible to prove. Carol's not organized enough to have kept those records. Patricia. And if she fights? Brian. She won't. You know Carol. She's conflict averse. She'll take the easy way out. Not organized enough. Conflict averse. They really didn't know me at all. But the group chat was what sealed it. Group. Family matters. Brian, Patricia, Robert, Hayes. Hayes. Here's the strategy. Brian announces the divorce at the anniversary party. Public humiliation creates emotional vulnerability. Carol will be devastated, embarrassed in front of friends and colleagues. Hayes. We have papers ready for her to sign that night. She voluntarily waives claim to the Georgetown property in exchange for a quick, quiet settlement and preserving her dignity. Patricia. Will that hold up legally? Hayes. If signed under emotional distress but without provable coercion, yes. The key is striking while she's too shocked to think clearly. Brian. What about her parents' contribution to the down payment? Hayes. Do you have documentation? Canceled checks? Gift letters? Brian. No idea. Carol handles all that paperwork stuff, but she's not very organized. Probably lost them years ago. Hayes. Perfect. Without documentation, she can't prove separate property contribution. House becomes marital asset, split 50-50. But with the waiver we're having her sign, you keep it all. Patricia. And the girl? Madison? Brian. She'll be at the party. I'm introducing her as my new assistant. Getting everyone used to seeing us together. Hayes. Smart. Establishes the relationship publicly. Makes the transition smoother. Patricia. When should we have Brian's new place ready? Brian. No need. I'm keeping the condo. Carol can find somewhere else to live. I sat in Brian's study, reading these messages in the dim light of the iPad screen, and I felt something strange. Not anger, not betrayal, not even sadness. Just clarity. This was who he was, who he'd maybe always been. And I'd been so busy being the good wife, the supportive partner, the woman who made everything work, that I'd never stopped to ask, what was I getting in return? I took screenshots of everything, uploaded them to a private cloud account, sent copies to Jennifer. Then I kept digging. 10. In Brian's desk drawer, buried under old tax returns and forgotten birthday cards, I found a letter. Georgetown University Hospital, Department of Oncology. Patient Brian Scott Moore. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Dear Mr. Moore, this letter is to confirm our discussion regarding your fertility status following chemotherapy treatment for testicular cancer, 2000-2001. As explained during your follow-up appointments, the chemotherapy regimen necessary to treat your cancer has resulted in permanent azoospermia, absence of sperm. While we had hoped for spontaneous recovery, your recent semen analysis confirms 0 sperm production. This condition is a known side effect of the treatment that saved your life. The infertility is not due to age, stress, or any factor related to your spouse. We discussed options including sperm donation, adoption, or acceptance of a child-free life. Please contact our office if you wish to pursue any of these alternatives. Sincerely, Dr. Richard Foster, MD Oncology and Fertility Specialist. The letter was dated 2003, 22 years ago, 2 years after we'd started trying for a baby, 3 years before we'd stopped trying, when doctors told us, sometimes it just doesn't happen. Brian had known. All this time he'd known it was him, not me, not us, him. And he'd let me believe it was my fault. Let his mother imply, year after year, that I was the defective one, the failure, the woman who couldn't give her son what he deserved. I thought about all those doctor's appointments, the tests I'd undergone, the hormones, the hope and disappointment, month after month, the way Brian would hold me after each negative pregnancy test, saying, "It's okay, we'll keep trying," when he knew it would never happen. I photographed the letter, added it to my evidence file. Then I put everything back exactly as I'd found it. "Carol, you look like you've seen a ghost." Jennifer studied me across her desk the next morning. I'd called her at 7 a.m., asked for an emergency meeting. I handed her my phone. "Read." She scrolled through the screenshots, her expression growing darker with each swipe. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. This is a conspiracy to defraud you of marital assets. That's what I thought. And the medical letter," she looked up. "Carol, did you know about his infertility?" "No." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "We were told there was no medical reason, that sometimes it just doesn't happen. He never told me it was him." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "That son of a bitch, he let you think For 22 years, I finished. Yes. We sat in silence for a moment. "Okay." Jennifer shifted into lawyer mode. "Here's what we do. You let him have his party. Let him give his speech. Let him think he's winning. And then you take the microphone. You tell the truth. All of it." She tapped my phone. "We have everything we need. The conspiracy, the affair, the medical deception. But most importantly, we have proof the condo is your separate property. Will that hold up? With your parents' check, the original deed in your name only, and the documentation showing Brian was added post-marriage? Absolutely. That's a textbook case of separate property. What do I need to do?" Jennifer pulled out a legal pad. "First, we document everything. Second, we prepare counter-divorce papers, ones that protect you. Third, we get you ready for what's going to happen at that party. Which is? You're going to let your husband publicly humiliate himself," she said with a smile that would have made a shark nervous. "And then you're going to show 100 people exactly who Carol Moore really is." And the next 10 days were a masterclass in preparation. I went to work, smiled at Brian, asked about his day, helped him plan seating charts for the party, and every night, while he showered off another woman's perfume, I built my case and my war chest. 5,000 had been just the beginning. Now, with Jennifer's guidance on what was legally defensible, I moved faster. My November salary, direct deposit to my personal account. My quarterly bonus from Alliance Development, another 18,000. Stock options that vested this month, 12,000 more. Every dollar I could prove came from my own labor, my own investments, went into my personal account. I documented everything: pay stubs, investment statements, deposit confirmations. A forensic trail that would show any court these were my separate earnings, not marital funds. Brian was spending our joint savings on his mistress and his lawyer. I was protecting what I'd earned myself. By the night before the anniversary party, my personal account held $50,000. Enough for the best attorney. Enough for a fresh start. Enough to never be vulnerable again. William Perry, our real estate attorney, provided a notarized statement confirming the condo's ownership history. My accountant provided documentation of every suspicious withdrawal from our joint accounts. Jennifer prepared divorce papers that protected my interests, papers that listed the condo as my separate property, detailed Brian's affair-related spending, and demanded full disclosure of his assets. And I practiced. In front of my mirror, I practiced the speech I would give, the words I would say, the truth I would tell, not with anger, not with tears, with simple, devastating facts. The night before the party, Brian came home excited. "Tomorrow's the big day," he said, actually kissing me, a real kiss, like he hadn't in months. "Our silver anniversary, 25 years. "Yes," I said, 25 years. "I have a special speech prepared, something I think will really change things. I'm sure it will." He went to bed early, wanting to be fresh for tomorrow. I stayed up, sitting at the kitchen island with a glass of wine, looking at our wedding photo on the wall. We'd been so young, 25 and 28. I'd believed in forever then. Now I was 50. Not young anymore according to Patricia, according to Brian. But I was something better than young. I was experienced, intelligent, financially independent, and completely done being underestimated. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Everything ready?" I typed back. "Everything. Remember, let him talk first. Let him hang himself, I will. Carol, you're going to be amazing tomorrow. You know that, right?" I looked at my reflection in the darkened window. 50 years old, 25 years married. Zero tolerance left for lies. "Yes," I typed back. "I know. I went to bed in the guest room, told Brian I wanted to sleep well, didn't want to disturb him with my tossing and turning. The truth was, I couldn't bear to lie next to him one more night. Tomorrow, at the Watergate Hotel, in front of 100 guests, Brian Moore was going to announce he wanted a divorce. He was going to humiliate me, expose our childlessness, introduce his young mistress, and demand I sign away my home. He had it all planned. His mother approved. His lawyer had the papers ready. His mistress had picked out her new furniture. What Brian didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been planning too. And my plan was better, because I had something they didn't have. The truth, the documents, and 25 years of perfectly justified rage, compressed into diamond-hard determination. Tomorrow, Brian would learn what happens when you underestimate an accountant. We always balance the books, and it was time to settle our accounts. The Watergate Hotel ballroom glittered like a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across tables draped in white linen. White roses and silver candles created an elegant contrast. A jazz quartet played softly near the corner. 100 guests in evening attire filled the room with the murmur of conversation and laughter. It was perfect. Exactly the kind of party Brian wanted. The kind where everyone would remember what happened. I stood near the entrance in my navy dress, not the one Brian had suggested I wear, but the one I'd chosen for myself. Simple, classic, expensive. The dress of a woman who knew her worth. "Carol, you look absolutely stunning." Sarah appeared at my elbow, her eyes scanning my face. Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it. Jennifer Williams was already seated near the front, briefcase tucked discreetly under her chair. She caught my eye and nodded once. David Thompson, Brian's CEO, approached to shake my hand. 25 years, that's quite an achievement in this day and age." "It certainly is," I replied. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Thompson. It means a lot that you're here." "Wouldn't miss it." He glanced around the room. "Brian said tonight would be memorable. I'm counting on it." Across the room, I spotted her, Madison Taylor, wearing a stunning red dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was talking to some of Brian's colleagues, laughing at something one of them said, playing her role as the new assistant perfectly. She had no idea what was coming. Patricia Moore held court at a table near the front, accepting compliments on her wonderful son, and the beautiful venue. She saw me watching and raised her champagne glass in a toast, her smile sharp as cut glass. And Brian was in his element. Working the room, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. He looked happy, confident, like a man about to get everything he wanted. At 8:30, the master of ceremonies, a professional Brian had hired for the occasion, tapped the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please." The room quieted. "Our host, Brian Moore, would like to say a few words." This was it. Brian took the microphone, his smile broad and practiced. He looked out at the sea of faces, friends, colleagues, family, all waiting to celebrate our marriage. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice warm and commanding. 25 years ago, I made a commitment. I stood in a chapel at Georgetown University and promised to love and cherish Carol Moore for the rest of my life. Applause rippled through the room. I sat perfectly still. It's been a long journey, a quarter century, and I've learned so much. His tone shifted, became more serious. I've learned that life doesn't always go according to plan, that sometimes what seems right at 25 looks different at 53. The applause died. People exchanged confused glances. "Carol is a good person." He looked at me, and I saw something like pity in his eyes. "She's responsible, stable, everything you'd want in a partner, past tense." People were starting to notice. But here's what I've learned. Longevity doesn't equal success. Staying doesn't equal happiness. His voice grew stronger. "I stayed because I'm loyal, maybe too loyal. But at 53, I've realized something important. I deserve a second chance." My mother half stood. "Brian, what are you—" "Please, let me finish." He held up his hand. "I deserve a chance at the life I always wanted. A family, children, a legacy." The word hung in the air like an accusation. "Carol couldn't give me that." He said it softly, almost sadly. 25 years, and we have nothing to show for it. No children, no real future. Just time passing. Someone gasped. I heard my mother say, "That son of a—" "So tonight I want to be honest. With all of you. With Carol. With myself." He turned to face me directly. "I've met someone who understands what I need. Someone who can give me the future I deserve. Her name is Madison Taylor." He gestured toward Maddie, who stood slowly, her face flushed with what she probably thought was triumph. "I'm filing for divorce." The words dropped like stones. "The papers are ready. Carol, if you'll sign them tonight, we can do this quietly. Preserve your dignity. Otherwise—" I stood. The room went silent. I walked to Brian, not rushed, not angry, just walked calmly to where he stood with the microphone. He looked uncertain for the first time. I held out my hand. After a moment, he gave me the microphone. "Thank you, Brian." My voice was steady, clear. For that very honest speech. I turned to face the audience. 100 faces staring at me, waiting for me to cry, or scream, or collapse. Instead, I smiled. "I appreciate honesty," I said. "So let me be honest, too. I've known about Brian's affair with Madison for 3 months. The room erupted. I waited for the noise to die down. I've known about his plan with his mother, yes, Patricia, and his lawyer, Robert Hayes." I gestured to a man trying to slide toward the exit. "That's him, trying to leave. I've known about the whole conspiracy to humiliate me publicly and force me to sign away my home." Brian reached for the microphone. I stepped back. "But here's what Brian didn't know." I pulled a folder from my purse. "This Georgetown condo we live in? It's not marital property. My parents gave me $200,000 as a wedding gift before we married. The original deed was in my name only. Brian was added after the wedding. I have the documentation." I held up William Perry's legal opinion. "That means the condo is my separate property, not subject to division." Brian's face went white. "Furthermore, I've been transferring money from our joint account for 3 months. All legally, all documented. Brian spent $8,000 on his mistress? I secured $50,000 of my own earnings." Patricia stood. This is ridiculous. Sit down, Patricia. My voice cut like a knife. I'm not finished. You wanted to know about my property documents for your estate planning? Now you know. The house was never Brian's, to promise you. I turned to Madison, who looked like she might be sick. Madison, I hope Brian told you the truth about why we don't have children. I paused for effect. Has he mentioned he's been medically infertile since 2001? Testicular cancer treatment, permanent azoospermia, 0 sperm count. I pulled out my phone, showed the photographed medical letter on the screen. He can't have children, Madison, not with me, not with you, not with anyone. He knew this 22 years ago. He let me believe it was my fault. Let his mother blame me for 22 years. Madison grabbed the back of a chair for support. You told me it was her age. I lied, Brian said, his voice barely a whisper. Oh, he's very good at that, I said conversationally. Lying, spending joint money on gifts for his mistress, planning my public humiliation, working with his mother and his lawyer to steal my home. I looked directly at David Thompson. Mr. Thompson, did you know that Brian has been in a romantic relationship with Madison Taylor, who reports directly to him? I believe that violates company policy on workplace relationships. David's jaw tightened. It absolutely does. And speaking of violations, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through screenshots. I have 3 months of text messages. Brian and Madison are planning their future in my home. Brian and Patricia strategizing how to manipulate me. Brian, Patricia, and Robert Hayes conspiring to commit fraud. That's not, Hayes started. It's all here. Time-stamped, saved, backed up in multiple locations. I smiled at him. You're welcome to try to claim attorney-client privilege, but conspiracy to commit fraud isn't protected. Jennifer stood, pulling papers from her briefcase. These are the actual divorce papers. Fair division of actual marital assets. Brian gets half the cabin, half his car, access to his own 401k. Carol keeps the condo, her retirement accounts, and, most importantly, her self-respect. Brian, Madison's voice was shrill now. You told me we'd have a huge place in Georgetown. You told me you had money. You promised. He's broke, I said flatly. Or he will be soon. $8,000 spent on you. Another $15,000 I found charged to various credit cards. And Mr. Thompson is about to fire him for ethics violations, aren't you, David? I think we need to have a conversation Monday morning, David said, his voice ice cold. Madison turned on Brian. You said you were successful. You said you had assets. He has debt, a voice called out. I turned to see Sarah standing. I work at Capital One. I pulled his credit report. With his written authorization from when you applied for that loan last year, Brian, you owe $35,000 in credit card debt, plus the mortgage on the cabin. Brian sank into a chair. So let's review, I said, my voice carrying across the silent ballroom. Brian is infertile, but blamed me for 25 years. He's been having an affair with his subordinate. He conspired to steal my home. He's deep in debt. He violated company policy, and he thought I was too stupid to notice any of it. I placed the microphone on the table. I'm not signing your papers, Brian. You're signing mine, tonight, in front of everyone. Jennifer walked over with her own stack of documents. No. Brian stood, trying to salvage something. I'm not signing anything without my lawyer reviewing. Then we go to court. I shrugged. Where all of this becomes public record, the affair, the conspiracy, the medical deception, your choice. He looked around the room, at his colleagues' disgusted faces, at his mother's horrified expression, at Madison backing away from him. You ruined everything, he whispered. No, Brian. I met his eyes. I just refuse to be your victim. There's a difference. Three days later, the knock on my door came at 7 a.m. Brian stood in the hallway of what was legally my condo, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 3 days. Can we talk? He asked. You have 15 minutes before my lawyer gets here. I let him in, but didn't offer coffee. We sat in the living room, him on the couch, me in the chair by the window. The morning light was harsh on his face. "I signed the papers," he said quietly. "I know. Jennifer filed them yesterday." "Carol, I'm sorry. For all of it. The affair, the lies about my infertility, everything. I waited. I was scared," he continued on. "When the doctor told me I was sterile, I was 28. Just beat cancer. And now I can't. I couldn't give my mother grandchildren. Couldn't carry on the family name. I felt like less of a man. So you made me feel like less of a woman." He flinched. "Yes. For 22 years. Yes." I looked at him, this man I'd loved, married, built a life with, and felt nothing. "David fired me," he said. "Madison filed a complaint, said I'd promised her promotions in exchange for the relationship." "Did you?" "I might have implied things." He rubbed his face. "Patricia had to mortgage her house to pay Hayes's retainer, and Madison, she's engaged to some venture capitalist now. She was seeing him the whole time, apparently. I was her backup plan." The irony was almost beautiful. "What are you going to do?" I asked. "I don't know. My reputation's destroyed. The video from the party has 2 million views. I'm a meme now. Silver anniversary guy." He laughed bitterly. "I lost everything." "You lost what you were willing to risk," I corrected. "Your job, your reputation, your marriage. You gambled on humiliating me and you lost." "I know." He stood to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you deserved better. You always did." "I know that, too," I said. "That's why I'm choosing better now." After he left, I sat alone in the quiet condo, watching the morning sun paint the Georgetown rooftops gold. My phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer. "Divorce finalized. You're officially free." And another from Sarah. "Lunch today? There's someone I want you to meet. History professor, widower, loves old movies. No pressure. Just thought you might enjoy the conversation." I smiled, typed back, "Why not?" 6 months later, I stood on my balcony with my morning coffee, watching Georgetown wake up below me. The cherry blossoms were blooming, late March in D.C., when the city transformed into something magical. My phone sat on the table beside me, open to an article about women rebuilding their lives after divorce. They'd interviewed me for it. Carol Moore, 50, CFO of Alliance Development Group. "The most important thing I learned," I'd told the reporter, "is that your worth isn't measured in years stayed or children born. It's measured in truth told and self-respect maintained." The article had gone viral. Women wrote to me from all over the country, women who'd been underestimated, manipulated, told they weren't enough. I've started a blog. Just financial advice at first. How to protect your assets, how to spot financial infidelity, how to build independence. But it had grown into something more. A community of women learning to value themselves. Patricia had sent a letter last week, a real apology, not the performative kind. She was in therapy, she wrote, learning about the damage she'd done with her expectations and judgments. "I spent 50 years believing a woman's worth came from her husband and children. I was wrong. You were always enough, Carol. I was the one who wasn't. I hadn't responded yet. Maybe I would. Maybe I wouldn't." Brian, I'd heard, was working as a consultant, slowly rebuilding. He'd started therapy, too. Good for him. Madison had married her venture capitalist in a lavish ceremony in the Hamptons. I saw the photos on Instagram. She looked happy. I hoped she was. My phone buzzed. A text from James, the history professor Sarah had introduced me to. We'd been seeing each other for 3 months now. Nothing serious. Just movies and dinners and conversation. "Good morning. Still on for the Kennedy Center tonight?" "Absolutely," I typed back. The funny thing was, I didn't need James. Didn't need anyone to complete me or validate me. But I enjoyed his company. And that was enough. I was 50 years old. I owned my home outright. I led my company's financial operations. I had built a community of women supporting each other. And tomorrow I might meet someone new, or try something different, or just sit on my balcony with my coffee. Either way, I was whole. Because the best gift I'd ever given myself wasn't revenge on Brian or victory at that party. It was the courage to know my worth, to demand truth, to refuse to be diminished. For 25 years, I'd measured my life by someone else's standards. Never again. I raised my coffee cup to the sunrise, to Georgetown, to myself. Here's to silver anniversaries. Here's to new beginnings. Here's to women who balance the books, in business and in life. The end.